Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host Alan Young and welcome to AMP, a show where we have a look at a range of the creative arts from all over Ireland. We have a fantastic show for you this week. A bit later on we have an interview with the wonderful Declan Gorman, a freelance theatre director, performer and writer who is going to share with us his insights into the performing arts in Ireland. Then we'll have music from Dundalk's very own alternative rock artist Alice Robinson and her band singing her original song Bonnie. You really don't want to miss that. But first, we met up with Kwesi Boyce and the kids at the Mad Youth Theatre in Dundalk. Let's have a look how they got on.
Mad Youth Theatre started back in 2011. There was nothing in the community like what I feel that this community needed. A place where young people could be in a place where they could be themselves and make relevant work that's relevant to them. For example, we run a 10-week introduction to youth theatre. It starts off with a jump ha. You know, they get down, they hunker down, and they have to jump and say ha. Now you think that might be simple, but actually it may take some young people a lot of effort to do something like that. It's hard because they're exposing themselves physically, vocally, but doing that is a first step to doing something else that is great. We are going to listen to each other. Each step of the way of this program helps build this young person, and you know, bit by bit, where they free themselves from overthinking and thought, and they free themselves physically and engage in the movement and engage with talking with other people. And before you know it, at the end of the 10 weeks, they're leaping off tables into each other's arms when at the very start they couldn't jump high.
I've really developed as a person, I feel. Yeah. In the last few months, even. Like, if I was to turn back time, I'd be a totally different person sitting in this chair than I am today.
Whenever I first joined, I was like, not shy, but I was probably not as confident as I am today. Like, even I think just being with you helped my confidence a wee bit. On World Mental Health Day, the 10th of October, we organised a day out in Earl Street, and we had these wee notes, and I was kind of like, my worry is, and you're right, we handed them out to people, and they would write down their worry or something they were worrying about, and we had a box where they could put it into, and it would be like they're throwing away their worry kind of. And we had these boxes of inspirational quotes where they would take them and they would just kind of cheer up their day.
The basic thing about it all was to show people that we're here and that we're there for them and the community. And the message behind the whole movement sequence was that was to reach out to your friends and other people there that need the help. And it was really the feedback we got was unbelievable. Like, people said that their children, that's what they needed that day.
Yeah, like it was something like that really like kind of cheered them up, like not cheered them up, kind of gave them hope kind of in a way.
When we look at the young person and they look at the programming, we look at them holistically. It's not just about having them come in and do theatre and learn how to act. It's about their personal development, their social development, and yes, their artistic development. The youth theatre environment really creates a place where they feel at home.
Welcome back. Now we have it with us, and I'm delighted to be joined by Declan Gorman, star of his one-man show, The Dublinator's Dilemma, and he has been involved in professional theatre for over 30 years. Declan, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us on AMP.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
You're very welcome. Declan, how important is community theatre to the performing arts?
I have been a great believer in the whole idea of participatory theatre and community theatre for most of my 30 years. When I started in the theatre first, I just joined like everybody else. I was a young actor. just mucking around in the fringe. But I was lucky very early on to meet up with people who were involved in social activism and justice campaigning and so on. And so I began to work in that area very early on in my own career. And when I see now like the proliferation of youth theatres and community-based arts practice right across the country, and not just in the cities but in rural areas as well, I think it's really exciting. I think it's a great, I think there's a real hunger among all generations, but particularly now I think younger generation of people to, you know, sometimes to just break away from the digital world and just get out and do something and mix and engage. I think theatre is a particularly good way of doing that. And it's also, theatre in a way is kind of the doorway to a lot of other kinds of art forms, you know, for dance, even for, you know, so much of you know, music and music videos and that sort of thing. The whole idea of getting together to tell stories. So I think it's a critically important thing, and I think it keeps the art form alive, and it keeps the whole idea of socialisation through art alive as well. It's a new kind of storytelling.
Funding is an important, integral part of any project, no more so than the art sector. And there's been some great news that the Art Council have just announced €68 million investment into the arts in Ireland, which is really great news. But how important is funding for the performing arts in particular?
Well, obviously it's critically important, and it is good news to see that the Arts Council has now turned the corner and that the figures are going back up again, because for, obviously, when the recession came, just before the recession, we had kind of won a big battle in terms of hearts and minds and in terms of the state and the society understanding that investment in the arts, rather than being money frittered away, is actually a real investment in people, and it's a real investment in culture, and it's a real investment in society. And we'd kind of won that battle, and I was very involved in campaigning for improved funding for the arts. And then suddenly the recession came and the whole thing just went through the floor, and it was a disaster, and there were about 7 or 8 years of disastrous funding decisions. Not only was there not enough money, but the wrong decisions were being made. So I'm personally delighted to see us turning the corner again. And I suppose the other thing to mention is, as well as the Arts Council, a really important development now is that local authorities are getting more and more involved in funding arts practice at local level. And that's a really good thing, because your local arts officer will generally know who's on the ground. They'll know local artists, they'll know young bands coming through, they'll know young theatre practitioners, whereas, you know, if all the decisions are coming exclusively from Dublin and from the Arts Council, that can be quite a problem in terms of local access.
So it's grassroots up and not top
It's
down
grassroots
kind of
up, yeah. So the local authorities, and to a certain extent the new Creative Ireland programmes, I think we're starting a better time in relation to funding, so that's good news for me.
So last year you had a big event where your play was performed at the Mumbai Mumbai Literature Live Festival in India as part of their 70th anniversary of independence. Were you surprised, as I was, that something based on Irish history could have such a deep connection with the population in India?
Yeah, I was very surprised to be invited, but when we got there I wasn't at all surprised then when I found out why, and the Mumbai Literature Live Festival they just happened to have a representative who's a Scottish person actually living in India, who came to see the show when it was done in Drogheda, when it was premiered in 2016.
Fantastic.
And he just loved it, and he just said this show can go anywhere. You know, it's a story of betrayal, it's a story of glory that falls apart, it's a story of men and women, it's a universal story, but also, he said, particularly in India because of the shared history of you know, the relationship with British colonialism and the British presence in India. And when we got there, I was amazed at the level of listening and the level of engagement with the work. It was really, really exciting. So not only did we do the Mumbai Festival, we actually toured to 2 other cities in India, and we got quite different reactions everywhere we went. But the Literature Festival was particularly strong because I suppose there was quite a strong theme there about history and historical literature. So we had a really articulate, huge audiences. I mean, we played in the National Theatre in Mumbai, and we had, I think, something like 900 people attending.
Wow.
And I was worried about the accents and all that sort of thing. And afterwards, people were just coming up to us and saying that was astonishing, that was great. So I was very proud about that.
Having had the play in Ireland and being seen by Irish audiences, and then going to India, did you notice a difference in audience reaction or participation, or was there a gag somewhere that the Irish people didn't get that the Indian people did?
There would have been a little bit. There would have been a little bit, you know, and particularly, you know, because we have the show's done with 2 actors, so we've one really great actor who plays Michael Collins, all through, but the other actor plays all the other parts. And he's a guy called Gerard Adlam, and he's an absolute genius in terms of weaving from one kind of character to another.
Difficult thing to do.
But some of the characters were quite, you know, for instance, when he was doing Eamon de Valera, you know, he was playing him quite effete and quite sort of standoffish. And particularly for older people in Ireland, that really had them laughing because they grew up kind of revering de Valera. So this kind of slightly camp, funny version of him actually got people giggling. So I suppose in India that those kind of nuances didn't work.
Okay.
But what I loved was that the real funny stuff actually made the people laugh, and the really sad stuff made them weep, and the really kind of poignant stuff made them stop and think. So I think fundamentally, you know, the human experience across cultures is the same, even if there are local differences or religious differences or cultural differences. The fundamental human story actually travels, and it was a real joy to have that proven in India because I'd never been there before.
I believe you have some upcoming gigs in both Fingal and Monaghan, you were telling me earlier on. Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about them and how people can get involved if someone's watching at home that wants to participate?
Yeah, well, after the glamour of Mumbai and last year my own show, The Dubliner's Dilemma, took me to San Francisco and Texas, so I had a really fabulous travel year last year, but I came home broke. So I'm really happy this year that I've actually got a couple of really interesting gigs back in, perhaps, you know, on the face of it, you know, less glamorous places, but for me, the places that really matter. So I'm artist in residence this year. I'm theatre artist in residence in County Monaghan, and I'm working on a couple of really cool projects in Castleblaney and Monaghan Town. So, for instance, I'll be starting next week working with Monaghan Youth Theatre on a project about identity. You know, how do we identify ourselves now? And that'll cover everything from gender right through to Brexit, all that sort of stuff we'll be dealing with young people. And then later on that'll spread out to involve the wider community as a whole. In Castleblaney I'm working with small children on a project about a local photographer, and again we're going to open that out to involve the community as a whole. So I'm really trying to do this thing of engaging with children and young people to begin with, and then sort of saying, look what the young people are showing us, let's all make art together. So it's a really interesting new way for me to work because I haven't really done a lot of work particularly with younger children in the past. And meantime, as you mentioned, in Fingal, which is where I'm actually living. I'm originally from Monaghan, but I live in Fingal. I've just been fortunate to win a big collaborative public art award. So I'm working collaboratively again with communities in Skerries, in Rush and Balbriggan over the next 3 years, and we'll be looking at everything from interculturalism and, you know, the mixed racial situation in Balbriggan to the first piece will be done in Skerries next summer, and it's going to be just stories from the sea and fishing and tragedies of the sea and the excitement of the sea and the joy of the sea and so on. So it's really about where people are at and getting people to kind of tell their own stories, facilitated by what I've learned over 30 years.
Speaking about that 30 years and the journey through performance, theatre, writer, all the caps that you wear, what has been your single biggest achievement where you've gone, wow, this is my life? Wow,
that's a great question. I've never really thought about that. I think bringing the big fellow around the country, actually, Mumbai was very exciting, but I think the big fellow was a particular achievement because it didn't get funded. It was turned down for funding, and I knew it was a good idea. And it was during a time in my own career, even though I was kind of, you know, reasonably well established, you know, big fish in a small pond, what's being established in the theatre in Ireland. But, you know, I felt very comfortable in my work, and I had a job and I had a position, and then suddenly I was freelancing, and it was all gone and the money was gone, but I knew that doing the big fellow was important. I knew it was an important piece to show. It had something really important to say in the context of now and Brexit and the border and all that stuff, but it really was a beautiful story as well, because it's from the perspective of Frank O'Connor, who was a young soldier who fought against Michael Collins. Now he wants to tell the story of Collins. And the fact that I managed to get that show up and running with no money and get it to India, that's my, at the moment, that's the one I would pick, but yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Declan, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate your time and for being so open about your career, and we can't wait to see what's to come.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
If you want to find out more about Declan, you can log on to declangorman.com. Don't go anywhere though, because after the break we'll be joined by Alice Robinson and the band for a spectacular performance. See you then.
Oceans crawl around my feet. What doesn't it know? I don't want it here. I've never wanted this before. So I'm walking away while I still have a chance.
Wow, that was great. After this short commercial break, we'll have a sit down with the band. See you soon. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on AMP. Let's get straight to it with the questions. So you've been gigging a lot, Alice, over the past while. What has that experience been like, and is there any standout moments for you?
Well, it's been great, and there's been loads. We've been doing quite a lot of gigs around Dundalk, and Spirit Store is a kind of a favourite of all of ours. We've done a couple of festivals, Gothic Species Festival and the Carrick Arts Festival, and we're trying to branch out now and get a few more gigs kind of nationwide. We've been gigging in Dublin and in Kildare as well, so yeah.
The guys have launched a new single, your debut single, I believe, called Rise. Let's take a quick look. So Alice, you played a pig in the video, the farm-bred animal, yeah?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the symbolism there and what the inspiration behind that video was?
Well, the video is a reflection on kind of inequality in society and how those who are oppressed can go into positions of power, and instead of trying to change the cycle, they become the oppressor. And that we see that in society all the time. So that was a kind of a reflection of that. And the little girl then was kind of a symbol of innocence, and kind of hope for the future to change things.
So you have an upcoming show on the 29th of November at Fibber McGee's in Dublin. How can we get tickets? And tell us a little bit about the gig itself.
You can buy them on the door. I have no idea how much we're charging just yet. It'll be astronomical regardless.
It'll be
outrageous.
I hope I'm getting VIP access as well.
Of course, naturally, yeah.
Champagne.
You've been good to us.
Okay. Guys, thank you so much for joining us, everyone of you, and for being here on AMP. We've had such fun, and unfortunately that's all we've got time for this week. I'd like to say a big thank you to Kwasi and the kids at the Mad Youth Theatre, to Declan Gorman, Alice Robinson and the entire band, Paul and Connor, and of course you at home for watching, you lovely people. I'm Alan Young. Good night. We'll see you soon.